Hello and welcome to the Tech Geek podcast. I'm your host Sukriti. Thank you so much for tuning in onto another episode. Folks, in the connected and convergent world, delivered by the Internet of Things, companies are increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks, as we know, and we've seen so many of them in the past couple of years, especially. As a result, there's been a shift to focus more on the development of technologies to combat cyber threats, as businesses come to grips with these new realities. And up until around, I think, 12 months ago, cybersecurity was dominated by the fear of breach, the reputational damage of data loss, event or a breach of confidentiality that we look at. So, following the large global cyber incidences that have happened, we witnessed in the past some time, there's a shift in the attitude and the principles of availability and integrity of systems and data that that we come into force with every day. It is also expected, that we see an increased focus on cyber resilience and how the availability and integrity of systems and data underpin the digital organizations. Many institutions, for that matter, have become more conscious about the whole cybersecurity part. And to actually dive further into this contemporary landscape of cybersecurity, I am in a conversation with Yogesh Patre, the CFO of Dhruva. Welcome to the show, Yogesh. I'm so glad to have you, here with me today.
Hi, Sukriti. Thank you for inviting me to the podcast. Absolutely thrilled and excited to be here. I am the Chief Security Officer at Dhruva. I lead all the cybersecurity functions and oversee the cybersecurity program at Dhruva. I'm excited and looking forward to sharing some interesting thoughts around the current cybersecurity landscape with you.
Wonderful. I am also equally excited, Yogesh, to get the right insights from you because I have certain set of questions, put forth that is gonna be, some major highlights for the entire year for the individuals as well as for the organizations. So, without further ado, I think we should just get started. So, to start with, why is security a necessary component of a holistic data resilience strategy, and how do they work together, and how are they different?
Absolutely, that's a fantastic question, right? So when we think about data resilience, it's a lot about availability, right? But it's a lot more than just availability. Data resilience is about how quickly can you get back to the business from a data point of view, right? How quickly can you spring back? Now, when you think about resiliency, it's your ability to anticipate, withstand, and recover from some adverse event that is affecting your data, right? What we have seen over the last many years is the adverse events are increasingly cyber events. So holistically, when you think about data resiliency, cybersecurity is a key central focus and a central theme when you formulate your data resiliency strategy for your data.
All right. To move on to the next one, there's a lot of talk in the industry about zero trust. Is it enough to keep a business secure from today's cyber threats, Yogesh?
It's a fantastic question. You know, I think as any security professional will tell you, right? There are no binary absolutes when it comes to cybersecurity. There are no silver bullets, right? So it is very difficult to say that a single approach, a single framework, or a single strategy will solve all the security problems that are out there, right? Having said that, over the last 3 or 4 years, the world has fundamentally changed, which was especially driven during the pandemic, where people had to work from home, from remote locations, and from offices. And we are now in a more hybrid kind of work environment and work culture, right? That means the threat model in which we think about the security strategy has changed. Now, zero trust has been around for the last 10, 20 years, but it has gotten a lot more prominence over the last few years because of this changing work culture, right? So I don't think it's a silver bullet per se, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And a lot of security forward companies are taking steps to implement zero trust architectures to improve their security posture.
All right. So I think it's sort of a trend and adaptation which is mandatory for organizations to look at, right, Yogesh?
Yeah, so I think more than mandatory, it's the necessity of today's environment, right? If you go back 20 years, if you go back 20 years, most technology teams and security professionals in those teams, had a castle and moat kind of approach to thinking about security controls. In a castle and moat kind of a model, you have a central castle with your data or crown jewels, and then you create different rings of security protection around it, right? Now, with hybrid kind of work environment, this castle and moat approach breaks down because your endpoints, your identities, and your users are not really in the castle. And so the zero trust approach is a necessity to secure and protect this new way of working, so to speak.
All right. And why are we seeing a convergence of security with data protection? I mean, of course, the whole world is revolving around data these days, but what is this convergence of security all about with the data?
Yeah, it's a great question. Now, fundamentally, as a society, we are creating more data every day than at any point in the history of humanity, right? So more data is being created all the time. What has also happened is the threats to that data are increasing a lot. It's very interesting. I was just reading a quote some time back where somebody asked a robber, "Why did you rob a bank?" And the answer was because that's where the money is, right? And so the data from an attacker perspective is always a focus, right? So more data, more attacker focus on that data, and more threats that are oriented towards data has made data protection come into a lot more prominence over the last 5-10 years. Now, when you think about data protection, there are different ways in which you can think about or define data protection. One way to define it is to ensure availability, integrity, and confidentiality of that data, right? Now, increasing cyber attacks are having a lot more impact on the availability, integrity, and confidentiality of data. So you can't really think about data protection in today's environment without really thinking about security of that data, right? So I would think about data protection and security as overlapping Venn diagrams, but just the two trends of more data and more threats targeting data are making security and data protection come even more closer to each other than they have been historically.
Wow, what a perfect example you've given of that quote that you've just talked about. Moving on to the next one, Yogesh. What emerging cyber tactics do you believe will become more prevalent in the coming times?
Again, a good question, Sukriti. I think we are seeing a lot of trends in the industry, a lot of trends on the ground. From my vantage point, I think ransomware really is one of the key tactics and trends that we are seeing across the globe. In the Western world, this has been a problem for a few years now, but even now in India, Asia Pacific, and a lot of other geographies, we are starting to see a lot of uptick in terms of the scale and the impact of ransomware as a tactic. We are also starting to see attacks on software supply chains over the last 3-4 years, and also attacks targeting identities and endpoints are increasing, right? I think if I had to pick the top three, these would be my top three in terms of tactics that are starting to increase, that have already started to increase, and that will continue to increase over the next year or two.
All right. So, what do you think will be the turning point in cybersecurity risk management in the next 5 years?
So one thing that we have seen is more government oversight when it comes to cybersecurity, right? There is more regulation across the globe that is being formulated, that is driving a lot more oversight from the government, but that is also driving boards of companies to have a lot more oversight and a lot more focus from a cybersecurity perspective, right? So this top-down pressure is in a way driving innovation, both from a product perspective, but also from an operational perspective within the security community. And I think that's going to be a catalyst over the next few years, where cybersecurity risk management is going to evolve and really get better across the board.
Okay, and talking about the whole cybersecurity and the risk management, I think the demand and the supply when it comes to having the right candidates in the markets to work around these threats is equally important. When we look at the market and the candidates, the potentials that organizations are looking at in terms of working around these cybersecurity threats, how is the skill gap affecting the cybersecurity landscape? And we've been talking about cloud-based solutions a lot in the market these days. How do cloud-based solutions provide data resiliency, and why is it better than any other alternative?
Absolutely. Fantastic question, right? So just some time back, we talked about data resiliency and how that means that how quickly can you get back to business? How quickly can you spring back? How available is that data? How quickly and easily can you recover or protect it, right? Now, fundamentally, when we think about cybersecurity, there is really a fundamental difference when you think about the cloud versus when you think about an on-prem sort of infrastructure, right? It's almost now well accepted throughout the world that there are significant security advantages by being in the cloud, right? The cloud has something called as the shared responsibility security model, where the cloud providers are taking a lot more onus and a lot more investment in terms of securing the cloud footprint, right? Whether it is from a vulnerability management or patching perspective. So I think just fundamentally, data protection, data resiliency with a cloud first kind of approach and strategy is significantly better when it comes to when you think about cybersecurity than thinking about a similar technology implementation that is on-prem. Because again, with the cloud, you get inbuilt segregation of that data. There is more security investment in the cloud to improve and protect the security of those technologies than what you would or what you could do in an on-prem kind of environment.
All right. So I think I would want to close the conversation on a very important note for our audience who are listening. Any career advice for aspiring cybersecurity professionals? What should they learn? How should they move ahead, or what should they really apply for a look at?
Great question. I think the advice probably depends on where you are in your career, right? If you are starting or if you are trying to get a foothold into the cybersecurity industry and find your first cybersecurity job, then the advice is going to be a little bit different. Whereas if you are a little bit senior, it's not that easy to break into the cybersecurity field as a profession. One thing I would recommend is get involved in the cybersecurity community, regardless of where you are. Even in India, there are a lot of industry-led groups, industry-led events where cybersecurity community comes together in terms of talking about presenting newer approaches to security. And as someone who's trying to get into this field, I think it's a great first step to be part of these industry self-organized communities so that you learn and network with professionals that are already working in these fields.
Wonderful. I think that was the perfect, words to end this conversation, Yogesh. It was a pleasure speaking with you on the entire cybersecurity landscape and how things are turning up when we talk of data resilience and how the organizations or individuals are gearing up for it. I'm sure your insights are going to help our audience as well as people who will listen further also to have a better understanding of what's coming in the coming years for cybersecurity.
Thank you, Sukriti. It was great to talk to you, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thanks, Yogesh. Once again, audience, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've made notes of whatever Yogesh has just spoken about in terms of skills, in terms of data resilience, in terms of what the market looks like. I will be back with another episode very soon. Till then, stay tuned to TechGeek for all the latest tech updates.